Tamales are probably one of the most beloved foods in Mexican culture, along with so many other foods that people love. I think tamales take the #1 prize. There's so many different variations of tamales depending on what region you're from, and it even varies from family to family, so I'm excited to show you guys my family's favorite recipe for our tamales. First things first, we gotta pick our chilies, and one thing my mom taught me is to pick the ones that are not as dark like this one you see here. Try to pick the ones that are a little bit brighter and redder in color. The ones you see me picking here are called guajillo chilies. They're a variation of dried chilies. We use guajillo and ancho in our tamales, and I'm gonna weigh them out here to be about half a pound. It's not quite there yet, but it'll be there. Now, same thing with these. Try to pick out the brighter ones. These were kind of dark, but it's okay. I picked out the best ones that I could. And same thing, try to make it about half a pound for the amount that we're making. And now we're moving on to the corn husks. I'm picking out these here. These are the ones that my Mexican store carries. There's so many leaves in there. I don't even know how many. I don't think there's a count on them, but just pick out a pretty pack and put it in your basket. Now we're moving on to the masa, and as you can see, there is a lot of different type of masas. There's regular masa, blue masa, yellow masa, different brand masa, Colombian masa, and finally the one we need, masa para tamal. The carniceria is going to be where you're going to find your meat, obviously. But all we're going to need from here today is these little cups you see on top of the counter, which is our pork lard. Now, my mom always told me to pick out the ones that are slightly more liquefied, but today it didn't seem like they had any, so I just picked any of them. Either way, it'll work, trust me. So that's all we're going to need from this store. I buy my meat elsewhere, so I'm going to go do that after this. But for now, just enjoy this little tour of my favorite local Mexican store. Now here's my mom toasting and deseeding our chilies. We're gonna do this for every single chili that we bought one by one. Like I said, it's a tedious process, but it's a labor of love. Now to season our broth, I do the same way for both chicken and pork or whatever kind I make. I add onion, mint, garlic, and chicken bouillon. It's a lot of meat that we have to season, so it's a lot of seasoning that we have to add to make sure that every single strand of chicken or pork gets flavor. I'm only recording the process of us cooking the chicken, but like I said, I made both kinds and it's the same process. Now those chilies that we toasted earlier, we put them in the blender like this and soak them with warm water for at least 15 to 30 minutes. After they're soaked and soft, I throw away a little bit of the water just because you can always adjust it later. We add garlic and salt, and we blend. We're frying up just a few pieces of onion. This is just 1 to flavor the oil and 2 just to make sure that it's hot enough. And when it is, we add our blended sauce. Now don't let my editing fool you. We blended that sauce for a good 5 or 10 minutes just to make sure it was completely smooth. But if yours isn't for any reason, you could always put it through a strainer. We keep our seasonings for the sauce pretty simple. It's just cumin, salt, and pepper. We're gonna let that simmer for a few minutes, and to thicken it, we add a slurry of corn masa and water. It's just equal parts of both. We ended up using about a cup of each. Now finally we're getting into production. So soak your corn husks for about 15-20 minutes and let them chill. Now we're gonna start making our masa. Now here is where shit gets real. Now I remind you, I'm making a huge batch of tamales, so it's even more tedious than it would be making a small batch. You don't have to, but it's highly recommended that you save the broth that you cook your meat in, let it cool down, and use that as the liquid you use in your dough. Now, like my mom says, ahora viene lo bueno. The dough is the most tedious thing that I've ever made. And I've made so many things in my life, but tamal dough, it's a trip. Don't let the editing fool you once again. We kneaded this dough for a good 30 minutes. My mom and I took turns. You can see me kneading it, you can see her kneading it, and that's just what I recorded. But we went back and forth for a good minute. I guess I should have said now is finally assembly time. So this is everything prepped, and it's pretty straightforward. We put a little bit of dough, a little bit of meat, a little bit of sauce, wrap it up and put it to the side. And now here's All Reliable. It's essentially just a giant steamer. I'm just gonna put it together with a little bit of water up to the fill line. Now don't tell my mom. If she asks, this is absolutely necessary, but if you ask me, it's really not necessary. So make sure you cover the whole bottom with extra corn husks. And now we're gonna take our tamales and arrange them neatly into our steamer. Now we're adding even more corn husks on top, and over this we're gonna add a piece of foil. We're gonna cover it with the lid and make sure that it's sealed so none of the steam escapes. And finally, after day's work, there is our beautiful tamales with green salsa. I hope you guys like this one. Enjoy.